It is right at the top of the hour. I want to welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. If you've had a moment and you're new, take time to participate in the poll. Each week, I invite everyone to participate. We want to hear from you. We want to know who's joining us every week. So welcome. I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping for individuals who are first-time viewers. And then if you have been joining us all throughout the summer and now the fall and even the spring, we have been hosting these weekly virtual sessions on behalf of the Emory Alzheimer's Disease Research Center since March 31st. And what we do is we try to pack a lot of information in a short amount of time. So you're going to hear from partners, you're going to hear from our Emory faculty, as well as some graduate students this week. So we have a lot in store for you. But every week we begin with exercise, because as we say every week, what's good for your heart is good for your brain. And so because we can't be with you in person, we're hosting these informative sessions to keep our aging adults engaged. So we're still in a pandemic, and until we're able to be with you in person, we're going to continue to provide these learning opportunities to our viewers. So thank you again for joining us. Welcome to the 106 individuals that are currently here with us today. And so I'm going to turn it over to John. So go get your sturdy chair, bottles of water, candy. I don't know. Every week he does something different. And so we never know. So he's going to tell you what you need so you can get your heart pumping and get ready to take notes. The session is being recorded and we will send out the PowerPoints. And this is a good time to share this information with your friends as well so they can listen in. So I will be back after John to tell you what our lineup looks like for today. So with that, hi, John.
Hey!
Hi there.
We doing good.
Oh.
First of all, I want to welcome everyone to the Emory Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. And today we're going to do construction. So I need y'all to get a sturdy chair and make sure you have your water bottles. Because we're going to body scope, we're going to work on that core, that legs, but most of all, we're going to work on that cardio. So in 5 seconds, I need you to get that chair, get ready, because we're going to get started. Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. Grab those water bottles now. Get those shoulders up. You want to get that chest, them shoulders and that back. Come on. Elbows up. Rest. We're going to go up at an angle. Let's go. And if you don't have water bottles, it's okay. There we go. Come on. Rest. Okay. We really going to engage those shoulders, those lats, and that back. Let's go. Come on. Bring it down. Come on. I need that chest out. Work it. Rest. Can I get those biceps right now? Here we go. And come on. Pump it. Pump it. Pump it. Pump it. Pump it. Come on. Pump it. Pump it. Keep it going. Let's carry on tonight. Hammer. cardio first. Let's get this cardio in, and then we're gonna come back to abs. Watch it. Here we go. Come on. We getting those hips. We getting those thighs. And I'm getting a little bit of that waistline. Straight ahead. Look at them hamstrings. Come on. Come on. Come on. Can we go back wide? Now we're really engaging those outer hips, those quads, and those hamstrings. Rest. Hey, hey. Up. Up. Come on. Go. Rest. Bring it back. Switch. Bring it back. Come on. Come on. Come on. Can I get a little upper body with it? Go. Come on. Whoa. I'm feeling good right now. I'm feeling so good. Come on. Rest. I might have to come back to that cardio, but I got to make sure we save a little energy for them abs. Here we go. I'm going to take my work belt off of this. Because I want to make sure we get those abs real wide. Come on. Come on. Remember, we're doing construction right now. We're building that body up. Come on. We get a little bit of that lower back. We get those side obliques. Come on. Whoa. Other way. Come on. Come on. Get it. Come on. Hey. Now we really engage those upper lats. Them abs are contracted. If you have any sciatic nerve problems, we're releasing all that energy and loosen up. Come on. Twist. Can I get a little bit of upper body with that? I'm feeling real good right now. Come on. Come on. Bring the arms down. Come on. Watch it. Watch it. Now I want to get those lower abs. When you lifting your leg, those lower abs are engaging. We nice and smooth today. Let's switch. Come on. Rest. I just need y'all to rock with me. Now remember, we getting those outer obliques right now. Come on. Come on. Good job. I told you we're gonna go back because I want to finish with cardio today. If that's okay, thumbs up. I see you. Here we go. Let's finish. We have 2 minutes. Stay with me now. Stay with me. Keep wide. Now we're engaging them hips. Let's finish up. We just have 2 minutes. Minute and a half. Sleeping. Oh, don't y'all fall like that chair. Don't y'all fall loud now. Other way. Ow. Don't you fall. Keep them with y'all today. Remember, cardio is life. And all during this pandemic, let's all be safe, do the right thing, vote. And this is John Lewis, and see you later. Bye.
Thank you, John. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We appreciate you. We're so grateful to have all that energy every week come through the screen. So our hat is off to John just for bringing all that enthusiasm and energy during this current time and state that we're in. But we're so grateful that you all have joined us. I see we have 157 people on. So thank you. We appreciate you for being here. I'm going to go over a little bit of housekeeping before you hear from our phenomenal lineup today. So if this is your first time joining us, welcome. This is the Emory Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. We have been hosting weekly sessions titled BrainTalk Live every Tuesday for 1 hour. Sometimes we go over since March 31st. So we try to pack a lot of information in a short amount of time. And we always begin with exercise because we say what's good for your heart is good for your brain. So today you're going to hear from Dr. Monica Parker. Really quickly, she's going to remind you of what's coming up next week. Next week is going to be a little bit different, but we are hosting our 19th Brain Health Forum virtually. Then you're going to hear from Dr. Ken Hepburn. He is the director of our Outreach, Recruitment, and Engagement Core, and he is our caregiver guru. He's going to be talking about how to identify and address caregiver guilt. A lot of us have had to transition to being a caregiver or our current caregivers. And so he's going to help us identify and address those issues that you may be experiencing as a caregiver. Then we're going to hear from Stephanie Fiber-Sutton. She is the CEO of Senior Advisory Services. So she has some great resources that you can access right here in the comfort of your home. Followed by Stephanie, we're going to hear from some of our doctoral students and graduate students. They are going to be talking about how to assist the cognitively impaired with voting. So we're in voting season. The countdown has begun. I mean, the election is right around, the final day of the election is right around the corner. And so if you are a caregiver or someone experiencing cognitive issues, they're going to provide you with some tips on how to navigate that. So you're going to hear from Andrew, Corrine, and Morgan. Then we're going to close out with Dr. A.M. Barrett. She is the director of the Neurorehabilitation program. So she's going to be talking about all the studies that you can participate in. Remember, we're a research center and we partner with entities across the globe to ultimately find an intervention or a cure or a therapy for memory impairment. And then finally, we're going to close out hopefully in the next 60 minutes with a video feature from our Healthy Aging study. That is a worldwide study that you can participate in from the comfort of your home. So if we have your email address, we will send out a link with a PDF and the video recording immediately after this session. I think I've covered all of the housekeeping I need to. If you have questions or comments or anything, you can use the chat function or the Q&A function, and we will do our best to get to you today. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Parker. And Dr. Parker, I'm going to pull up while you remind us that we need to register for the forum.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us at the Goizueta Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, our BrainTalk Live. Next week will be what we usually have in the fall, which is our Fall Brain Health Forum. We've been doing these brain health forums since about 2010, 2011, and this would be our fall forum. So unlike today, next week, you'll be tuning in a little bit earlier, 1 hour earlier. We will begin at 1:00 p.m. and it'll go till 3. So we'll finish at about the same time, but we're going to begin 1 hour earlier. So next week, we're going to talk about dementia. Dementia is a many splendored term, and it refers to a number of different disorders under that same umbrella. Under this umbrella, we have Alzheimer's, we have Lewy body dementia, we have frontotemporal dementia, we have trauma-induced brain disorders and vascular dementia. So next week, you're going to hear from international experts in the area of Lewy body dementia, Dr. James Galvin, who is professor of biomedical science and associate dean for clinical research at Florida Atlantic University. Dr. Robert Stern, PhD at Boston University, who is a senior scientist, professor of neurology, neurosurgery, and anatomy and neurobiology. He's the former director of the clinical core at Boston University, but now he is leading the chronic traumatic encephalopathy kind of like research center. Dr. Karima Benamer here at Emory is going to talk to you about vascular dementia and what causes vascular disease or how strokes may affect your cognition. And finally, Dr. Lenora Higginbotham, who's a neurologist who specializes in movement disorders or Parkinson's disease, to talk to you about what kinds of cognitive dysfunction you can experience if you have Parkinson's disease. We'll be rounded out by Mrs. Suzette Binford, who's a social worker who works in our cognitive empowerment program, but we'll talk to you about different family services and how families can cope with cognitive dysfunction and what services are available. We'll also hear from somebody from the Lewy Body Disease Association. You will be welcomed next week, not only by our John Lewis, but Dr. Alan Levy, who is the head of our Department of Neurology and is the leader and founder of our Goizueta Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. So next Tuesday, not at 2, but at 1, you're going to we will be hosting our annual Fall Brain Health Forum. Lots of information, experts, internationally known experts in Lewy body dementia, chronic traumatic encephalopathy from Florida Atlantic University, Emory University, and Boston. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We hope to see you next week.
Thank you, Dr. Parker. And our team is going to post the registration link in the chat. Remember, it is a different registration link. And the reason why we keep, that's one reason why we keep promoting it, because even though if you've joined us on every Tuesday here, this will be a different registration link, okay? All right, hello, Ken, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm well, I see you're in the office.
I snuck into the office today, that's right.
Uh-oh. All right, well, we have this topic today that seemed very prudent during this time in the current state that we're in to talk about it and share with the viewers today. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thanks so much. And good afternoon to everyone. And thank you so much for continuing to join us in these talks. So I always wonder how Cornelia picks the topics. And I think somebody must have said, let's deal with guilt. And she looked around for the Irish Catholic guy. And so I'm obviously the group expert on guilt.
Yes, absolve us.
I can do that in 2 languages, so Latin and English. So if you want to move the next slide, I want to talk about guilt. And in keeping with my own heritage, mortal sins, venial sins. And I think what we should do is begin by thinking about what should or might one be guilty as a caregiver, feel guilt as a caregiver. So one category, and we've talked about this in a previous conversation, is abuse. So abuse is a really positive thing. It is a positive action that is results in injury or damage. Okay, something that one does, and it doesn't have necessarily to be deliberately, but it is something that results in injury or damage. And or it can be the sort of intemperate use of language that can really hurt. I mean, words obviously can hurt. So it's either words or physical maltreatment. So abuse is a pretty serious kind of thing to think about. Not that neglect is not serious, but it feels as though, unless it leads to injury or damage, it's more of Well, as it says, little attention, there's giving little attention or respect to somebody. So really kind of setting the person aside or leaving things undone. So I think it's important to distinguish between abuse, verbal or physical, that leads to damage or injury, and neglect, which is a form of disregard or maybe disrespect that may not lead to injury or damage, although in sufficient amounts, it becomes abuse. So there's no bright red line here. Next slide. So then I thought, what actually should we talk about as guilt, and what should we talk about as fact-based guilt and feeling-based guilt? Because I think here's where caregivers get especially whipsawed. So fact-based guilt is the fact of having committed a breach of conduct. Taking this stuff from dictionary, right? You really did something, and so that is a fact, and it is something that's felt by a person who has actually committed an offense like that. So something happened, you did something, one did something, and especially if it was done consciously, there's this sense, I did something wrong. Set that off against feeling-based guilt. Here, I think, is where a lot of caregivers are particularly enmeshed. The sense of feeling deserving blame for imagined offenses or a sense of inadequacy. So it's self-reproach. One way to think about feeling-based guilt is it is a deviation from an ideal that one sets for oneself. Okay, so I say, let me just give you an easy example. I say, I'm going to go to the gym 6 days out of 7. And I find that I miss 2 days over the times every week for 4 weeks. Feel a little guilty about that, but it's not really an offense. It's a violation of an expectation I've set up for myself. Nobody's harmed. I mean, maybe in the long run I am, but it's really not an active breach of conduct. So I'm trying to convey the sense that there's a difference between something that actually happens and something that is the falling off from an expectation that you have for yourself, or maybe that others impose upon you. If you're a caregiving daughter in a big family, and the rest of the family saying you should be, any sentence that starts you should be, is setting you up for deviating from that norm established by others, as well as a norm established by yourself. If you deviate from that norm, is that guilt or is that self-reproach? And that distinction between guilt and self-reproach, I think, is critical for caregivers. So let's go to the next slide. So I just kind of brainstormed to myself some things caregiver might do in the course of a day, especially these days, which are long, isolated, without help from the outside, right? So in the course of the day, you might lose temper. You lose your temper or feel irritated. You know, the perfect person wouldn't lose her temper or feel irritated. You might, think, I'm not gonna, she was in the sweatshirt yesterday. It was okay. It's not really dirty. Let's put it on today. And then tomorrow, let's put it on tomorrow too. Well, that's really a deviation from a norm of keeping the person looking really spiffy. Is that neglect? Is that abuse? You might let this person sit unoccupied and withdrawn for 20 minutes while you're off doing something that either you need to do or you want to do. you might lock the door to prevent the person from going outside. Whereas you know that's probably not a good thing to do, it's probably not safe, but you know he's been wandering towards the door, you can't keep track of him all the time, you're maybe working from home, so you lock the door. Or it just gets to be so much and you take a short walk around the block. You lock the person in for 10 minutes in the middle of the day, and you're going to cool down, you come back, you feel better, you feel refreshed. You wake up this morning and you realize when you give the person her meds, oh my gosh, I forgot to give her noon meds yesterday. Or, and maybe none of you feel this, but I've heard people say it, people think, you know, if she would just pass on, if he would just pass on, if this cross would, you know, could be removed from me. A terrible, terrible thought, right? Must be an awful person to have a thought like that. Come on, everybody thinks that. If this could just end. So those are things about which I believe they represent a deviation from some ideal. They could cross a line, right? That 10-minute cool down walk could turn into a 3-hour cool down walk. Then you're really putting the person in a condition of danger. 10 minutes, it's not perfect. On the other hand, if you're physically restraining the person or shutting the person in a room, that's intentional. That may well cross a line, not some imaginary line, but a real line that says, I am imprisoning the person. I am restraining the person. There are standards that violates. Or I strike and push the person, or push the person. There's a really serious kind of line about hitting someone or physically abusing the person. So if you're on one side of this set of lines, above that blue line, maybe these are standards from which you're deviating. Below it, there's a broader kind of societal standard that you may be not, that you may be violating. So go to the next. So from a caregiver's perspective, think about components of serious concern. Was there deliberation? Is there repetition? Is there injury? Am I thinking, I got a locker in the room and I'm just going to keep doing it day after day? Or are these sort of do these represent a sort of fall from grace? I'm frustrated, I'm exhausted. I wasn't respectful, but I wasn't harmful. I had to do it. I had to take care of myself. And geez, it's only human. Depending on where you are in that spectrum, if there's serious concerns, then it's really important to seek professional help. Go seek out a counselor, talk to a physician, and say, oh, this is happening and I need help. Because if it is happening, that's something about which to feel real concern, get help. Somewhere in the middle, talk to somebody. Talk to maybe a member of your family, talk to someone in a support group, to talk to a counselor, but talk to somebody. But if it's the other side of these sort of venial sins, these falls from grace, be very forgiving of yourself. You are doing a remarkable job. And so go to the next slide. There is really, it's nowhere written that caregivers are expected to apply for sainthood. And that's the standard. If you're judging yourself against standards of sainthood, you're actually abusing yourself. And so be really careful. And I love this. This is from the Roman poet Terence. I'm human, and I think nothing human is alien to me. So none of the things we talked about, right, are impossible. Any of those things can come in your mind because you're human. That they come into your mind, they are not guilt producing. They're affirming your humanity. It's what you do how you do it, what your intent is. And I thought it would be great to notice that there actually, you can Google this, there is a patron saint of caregivers, and it's St. John the Evangelist, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the one that Jesus called the beloved apostle. So that's who you got looking out for you. And that's what I got to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Ken. And I think, the resounding top for me was there's things you might do, but, don't be so heavy on yourself,
Yeah, really.
just we're hard on ourselves. And whether you're a caregiver of someone with memory loss or a parent, or you've got adult teens that have returned home.
Oh my. Well, if that's the case, you're absolutely forgiven. But, realize that you are you're not alone as a caregiver. You're surrounded by family and friends who are creating an environment of support, but also an environment of expectation, some of which may not be realistic. And it's unfair to ask you to try to live up to. And so it's not only just be easy on yourself, but, push back a bit on people and say, look, if you think you're holier than thou, please, I love that we're doing this religious topic, then please come and help me. And I'll let you in the house, and I'll share the task. And maybe you should, go a little easier on me.
Absolutely. All right. You got an amen. I love this topic.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So next up, we want to provide a resource for you if you are a caregiver. So lots to cover. Again, we're at the halfway mark, so we may go a little over today. We apologize, but we want to get all this information to you today. So welcome, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so Stephanie, go right ahead and we're going to dive right in.
Sure. Thank you. So the Senior Advisory Services, and we help folks with evaluating senior housing and care options for their loved ones. So how can we help? Educating our clients on what are the different senior living options out there that range from independent living, assisted living, memory care, nursing homes, home care services, and hospice. I mean, the list goes on, an overwhelming number of options. And the best analogy that I give my clients is within that spectrum of senior housing and care options, you have options ranging from Motel 6 to the Four Seasons, and trying to figure out what is the best fit for your loved one. Even if you can afford the Four Seasons, is that really what you want? Also, we provide tips for our clients in having that difficult conversation with your loved one and coming up with creative ideas on how to broach that topic, or knowing that you're not alone in having that conversation. You ask for support from other family members, friends, maybe a church member who is close to your loved one, or even getting the doctor involved. So there's several ways to go about that and not feeling that you're alone and having that conversation with your loved one. We also provide education around payer sources for senior living. So for example, majority of senior housing is private pay, but not all. We'll go through a series of questions and understanding if you're eligible for veterans benefits, or does your loved one have long-term care insurance? Do we need to look at affordable senior housing? And we also can look at Medicaid resources and programs that are available. All that said, our expert advice and guidance is at no cost to our clients. We're compensated through senior housing communities. Next slide, please. As you know, selecting the right provider is really the key to being successful and having peace of mind and knowing that your loved one is being taken care of in the right place. And we use an approach in a 9-point system to really evaluate each of the communities that we work with and that we recommend to our clients. So I'll just run through these with you. One is you may want to take notes here too. Evaluating the ownership of the company and what is the culture of that company. You have small companies, you have large companies, and I think that the culture is so important that they have with their employees, because that's going to come from the top down. And if the employees, there's a great culture and employees are happy, in turn, they're likely going to provide great care if they're happy where they work and feel appreciated. Two is the business model of a senior housing community or a 55 active adult 55 apartment community or assisted living. What I mean by business model is some communities have just an active adult model. That's what they are. They're very active. The complete opposite spectrum would be a community that is a care model. They really cater to a fragile population that needs a higher end of acuity. And I think it's important to value that and figuring out, okay, where does my loved one fit in and finding that right community. Three is transparency. Is the community transparent about their pricing, about their business model, and also what do those cost increases look like in the future, and what kind of care can they provide and what they cannot provide. That's important to ask up front so you're not surprised down the road. Four, quality of care. Be sure to ask and evaluate, what are their staffing ratios? Do they staff at the minimum, or do they staff above the state minimum staffing ratios? And what does the longevity look like with their team members that are in place? Regulatory and compliance, number 5. There's a lot of information that you can get online that's public record about their facilities' annual inspections, which is something that's to include and something to kind of reference. But more importantly, to know what type of license does the facility have that you're looking at. In Georgia, you have personal care home license, and you also have assisted living license. And keep in mind, when it comes to active adult apartments and independent living communities, they are not licensed by the state and held to the standards of assisted living, memory care communities, and personal care. 6, client feedback. Be sure to always ask for testimonials or to speak with current family members or current residents and ask what their experience is. And we also take our client feedback that has had, one-on-one experience where their loved one lives in a community. It's very important for us to understand what that experience has been, positive or negative, because we tie that into, whether we make that recommendation in the future for that facility. Physical environment is important, the cleanliness of the facility. And this is a little bit more difficult right now to see due to COVID. Most facilities are not doing in-person tours. So you're doing a virtual tour, and all of what I'm mentioning, you're trying to observe on that virtual tour, which makes it a little bit more difficult, but can be done. 8, the dining programs. Understanding what type of dining program do they offer? How many meals are included with the base rent? Are there additional meals available? And is there an extra cost for that? And also, prior to COVID, I would have recommended to go in and actually try the food. I think that's important, so you can actually taste it, because we know that dining is an important part of the day. Safety and security, number 9. Ask the communities, what do they have on site that really keeps their residents safe and secure? Those are really good questions to ask. And then again, tying into COVID, ask what their visitor policy is. Right now, I think that the challenge that I've seen with families resisting to want to move their loved one into a community is the challenge that they have, that if I move my mom or dad, the facility doesn't allow visitors right now due to COVID, and I don't want to abandon them in a facility. So that's really important. And some facilities are offering visitation in courtyards or window visits, but you want to be sure to be aware of that prior to moving your loved one. Next slide, please. So how does our service work? So you can call or email us, and we'll connect you with one of our personal local advisors. And you may end up speaking with myself as well. We really listen to you and understand what is your unique situation, what are your needs. And with that said, we do all of the legwork and the research and coming up with the appropriate options that are a good match for your loved one. We'll determine what is the pricing for each of these facilities, availability, and it really saves you a lot of time. And again, we'll do all of that for you. In addition, we maintain your privacy. We're not giving out your contact information. We're your one point of contact, which is important. Once we send you over a custom list of senior living options or care options, such as home care, to explore, we'll set up a call to review those together and talk through all of the things that are important about each of those facilities, maybe pros, cons, and what's important to you. And once that's done, you can really just enjoy peace of mind because that weight will be lifted, that you don't have to worry about doing all of that. Next slide, please. All that said, if we can help you, we'd be happy to get started, and I've listed our contact information here. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Stephanie. I saw a couple of people with hands raised. I'm curious do you have questions about the cost or the referral process? How does the service, how are you funded, and how is this service free?
I'm trying to read this. How does the, oh, okay. So how is my service at no cost to our clients? It's similar to a realtor model. If you were to hire a realtor as your agent and you purchase a home, we're compensated essentially through a commission-based program that the senior living communities compensate us.
Got it. Okay. And let's see. All right. Okay. All right. So Stephanie will be on a little bit longer if you want to chat with her directly. We are going to keep moving. Next up, we have several speakers who will be doing a presentation on behalf of our Cognitive Empowerment Program. And Crystal and Ellie, they're going to post the link for the Cognitive Empowerment Program. Every Wednesday, they are hosting live sessions throughout the day with a variety of features. And so please register for those programs. I think the first one starts Wednesday at 10 a.m. And then coming up in November, we're going to invite their exercise specialists to come on after BrainTalk Live and share some of their exercises with us. So whether it's yoga or Tai Chi, they will be joining us in a couple weeks. So be on the lookout for those announcements. All right, so first up we have Kareen, correct?
It's Karen, but it's Andrew who will be going first.
Oh, okay. Karen, interesting. Interesting. All right, well, hi Andrew, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Thank
okay,
you
well,
for
welcome. I have your slides, and you can just let me know when to advance. So if you want to introduce your topic, go right ahead.
That sounds great. All right, well, hi there, everyone, and good afternoon. So we are going to be talking to you all today about voting and cognitive impairment. And so me and my other two presenters here, we are all doctoral students representing Emory's Cognitive Empowerment Program. And so we wanted to do this talk today because we have been getting the question of whether people with cognitive impairment can vote. And so this talk is really targeted towards caregivers who want to assist loved ones in the voting process. But all this information is very applicable to individuals with cognitive impairment as well. So we are going to be going over how this process works and what you can and cannot do to make things go more smoothly. So we can go on to the next slide here. All right, so capacity to vote. So voting is a sacred privilege. And so evaluating the capacity to vote truly should not be done unless it is court authorized. So very importantly, medical diagnoses like mild cognitive impairment, Alzheimer's disease, or any brain injuries, none of that disqualifies you from voting. And so caregivers can assist throughout this process in many ways, but ultimately the candidate preference of the voter should be respected. And so now would also be a good time to mention that this talk is completely nonpartisan in nature. It's only intended to present information about how this voting process works. So now we are going to transition to look at a few scenarios to help tease some of these issues apart. And Karen is going to take over at this point.
Thanks, Andrew. So we wanted to discuss some possible situations that you may encounter when dealing with voting and cognitive impairment. So one of the first situations we have is, what do you do if the voter asks you who they should vote for? As Andrew mentioned earlier, the preferences of the voter should be respected. So the overall take-home point for this kind of situation is, you should find a kind and respectful way to remind the voter that they're the ones to make their choice independently. And if they can't make that choice, then that's perfectly fine. And if you're at the polling place and you're going through different ballot items, you can just move to the next item on the ballot. You can discuss politics at home and at different settings, and provide information and all of those things. But when you get to the polling place, you really want to make sure that the person the actual voter is not being influenced in any manner, and that their choice is what's marked on that ballot. So what you can do is prepare a response so that you're ready if that does occur. And a suggested response is, the choice is yours, not mine. You are free to choose whomever you wish. What you cannot do is, you shouldn't attempt to influence their preferences. And if they're not able to communicate a choice independently, they cannot vote for the item, and that's perfectly fine. So if you're at the polling site and there are a few items that the voter isn't really responding to, it's okay to submit a partially completed ballot. Go ahead to the next slide. Another possible scenario is a person is not able to read or mark the ballot on their own. So essentially, they need some assistance. The overarching take-home point for this situation, the scenario is, only mark ballot items for which the person has communicated a choice. So if you are someone who is cognitively impaired or has some type of brain injury and needs some assistance, you can get assistance in reading and marking your ballot. So whatever type of assistance you may need, you should be able to, at the polling place, receive some assistance. And we'll talk about ways to request assistance in the next slide. As a caregiver, though, you can aid in marking the ballot for a care recipient. As a caregiver, you're also able, you can only mark the ballot according to what the person indicates is their choice. And again, we really want to highlight the point that only making some choices on the ballot. So if the voter is just voting for the election of president, but not others, is perfectly okay. What you cannot do is, if a person is unable to communicate their choice, you cannot mark their ballot for that particular item. You can go ahead to the next slide. Thank you.
All right. So requesting assistance at the polls. So importantly, any voter who needs assistance can get assistance. The only caveat here is that the individual who is assisting must record their name on the disabled elector's voting certificate. And so who can help out? Just about anyone can help. So family, friends, that's all fair game. The only people who cannot help are representatives of the elector's employer or union. So those two groups cannot help. And then in terms of the in-person assistive voting devices, all of these bulleted points here, these are supposed to be offered at the polls. So that includes an audio ballot, a magnifying glass, and should you need to vote while being seated or in a wheelchair, that option should also be available. And then also, I will let you all know that if there's anything you know for sure you need, such as glasses or a hearing aid, that's something that we definitely recommend you bring. We can go on to the next slide, and I believe that Morgan is going to go over voting in Georgia.
Yep. So like Andrew said, I'm just going to talk about voting in Georgia. So there's a few ways to vote. You have the absentee ballots. You can do early voting, and then you can also vote on election day. And then the next slide. So in talking about voting by absentee ballot, the process that you would have to do is 1, request your mail-in ballot by submitting your application by October 30th, but we suggest doing that. Like if you haven't requested it, to do that now, today, because your ballot has to be received by Tuesday, November 3rd. And they say, to give a buffer of 7 days before that, just to make sure that it's there on time. And then we have a link there at the bottom. Like if you want more information about the absentee ballot, the application process, you can go there. Next slide. So in returning your absentee ballot, there are a few ways to return it. So you can mail it back. You can return your ballot in person to your local county board registrar's office, or you could drop it off at a designated drop box in your county. But it just has to be received by November 3rd. Okay. And then, so moving on to early voting. Early voting is actually happening now, and that ends next Friday, October 30th. During the early voting window, you may vote at any voting location in your county. And then to find where those are, we have, again, a link at the bottom. And I think earlier somebody had a question about the power of attorney. For that, I'm not too sure, but we talked about the county registrar's office on the last slide. That might be a good resource for you to call. There's a link on our PowerPoint. You can click that and there'll be a phone number and you can call them and make sure. But I'm pretty sure even with the power of attorney that your partner or whomever can still go vote on their own. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. So voting on election day. So you should have received a voter registration card in the mail with your polling location on it. And if you haven't, or if you just want to make sure that the polling location is correct, you can go to your Georgia My Voter page, and the link is there at the bottom to just check your polling location. And you have to vote at your assigned polling location on November 3rd. And the next slide. So what to bring to the polls? You have to bring some sort of photo ID. So this is a Georgia's driver's license, a valid passport ID, military photo ID, or a valid tribal photo ID. It's really any valid state or federal government issued photo ID. That's what you need to bring to the polls. And then one thing we wanted to just make sure everybody knows is that when you are actually going to fill out your ballot, you can't have your cell phone on. So just make sure when you're filling out your ballot, it's in your pocket, in your purse, that it's not off. And then also to be aware that when you go to the polling locations, your clothing can't be overly political. It needs to be like more plain clothes because each polling location has different rules about that. So just to be safe, to wear plain clothes. Okay, next slide. And then what to bring to the polls. We just recommend bringing water, snacks, outdoor folding chairs, and you can bring paper notes if you just want to keep track of what who you want to vote for. You can bring that into the booth with you. So all of these things are just recommended. You don't have to bring them. Okay, and then next slide. And then again, here is just a link of the helpful resources that I was talking about earlier. And then one more slide, and I think that's it. Just thank you for your time and attention.
Great. All right. Great job, students. Thank you so much. There is another document that we will send out as well with the PowerPoint slides. Ms. Mary says in some locations, it may be a requirement that the vote will not count unless the ballot is more than 10% completed. So we really want to, especially when you're assisting your loved one or friend or whomever, that you remain diligent and try to get through completing the majority of the ballot as best you can. I had the opportunity to vote on Sunday, and there were some older adults there, and I was very aware that it was two families assisting their loved ones and filling out the paperwork and having to speak a little louder for their loved one and direct them, but they definitely filled out the paperwork and stayed right there with them. And the poll workers were so diligent. So I would just say bring your patients if you are participating in early voting. So again, thank you all. What a great job. I see, let's see, someone else says you can go in, you can early vote anywhere in your county and perhaps the state, but I would recommend you stay in your county just
Yes.
to make things easier. Ken, do you want to add to that, or Monica?
Just did want to add, that was a wonderful presentation. Thank you. If you have requested an absentee ballot, or if you've sent in an absentee ballot, you can check on the website to see that the ballot has been sent or it has been received. If it looks like you haven't gotten it, but you've requested it, or if your ballot hasn't been registered, you can go to the polling place and vote provisionally. There's a way when you check in that the poll clerk can call and find out whether you've already voted an absentee and it's been registered or not. If you've got an absentee ballot and you haven't turned it in, bring the absentee ballot with you. The ballot clerk, precinct captain can spoil, is the official word, the absentee ballot and let you vote in person. So check the website if you've done any of the online stuff.
Perfect. All right. We, again, thank you all. Thank you for your remarks, your observations, your feedback. We appreciate it. Give a round of applause to our students who are diligently working in a space that, you know, is not always of interest. So we thank them for their interest in topics and content that affects older adults. So next up, we have Dr. A.M. Barrett. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. We're so happy to have you. She's going to be talking about all the wonderful things that are going on here in the Atlanta VA. And you see lots of acronyms there, but they're all spelled out for your convenience. So take it away, Dr. Barrett.
Thank you all for welcoming me. And I apologize, I was signed in the wrong way. We're all getting comfortable even after these months, many months. I'm a neurologist and I'm the executive director, the leader of the center on the 12th floor of the Atlanta VA. As you drive by on Claremont Road, you can give us a wave. I know many of you have seen Holly Hudson and Amy Rodriguez and Joan O'Sara, my colleagues, but we're going to talk a little bit about the center. And I'm not sure, can you go ahead to the next slide? We should be very proud to have a rehab research and development center here in Atlanta. There are only 13 of them in the country. And I know that you all are aware the VA has made a very significant investment in rehabilitation. So many of you may have experienced rehabilitation, whether it was physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech language therapy, whether it was inpatient care in a rehabilitation hospital or some other form of rehabilitation. Only the VA has a special research pillar and research centers really devoted to rehabilitation in this way. And we're very proud to have a center, the Visual and Neurocognitive Rehabilitation Center. Go ahead to the next slide. Our mission is to improve veteran health and quality of life in visual and neurocognitive disorders, so thinking disorders, and you all are quite familiar with cognitive disorders, and I know you're all probably quite familiar also with invisible limitations and invisible disabilities, and people who live with visual problems live with that every day. And we on the 12th floor engage in an alliance of researchers and clinicians, and we do rehabilitation studies. We're a collaborative center with different academic affiliations, very proud to be affiliated with Morehouse, as well as Emory and Georgia State and Georgia Tech. Next slide. So there are a number of different parts to our center, and really will invite you all, whether you're veterans or whether you love a veteran or whether you are just interested in promote and support an ally of veterans, when you'd like to come up when we open up again. We're slowly opening up some parts of our center, the VA Medical Center. We're not completely open yet. But on the 12th floor, we have a number of different kind of core operations that support our research studies. And these include administrative operations, of course, but also brain imaging, physical exercise that we'll talk about, and then molecular biology. Very exciting. Next slide. So here's the bottom line is that we have a couple different opportunities for folks. Again, whether you are a veteran, whether you love a veteran and care about and are an ally to veterans, or whether you're just interested and to participate in research in particular, because if you're female, if you're a woman, it will be that there are not enough people participating in research studies across the VA to represent our female veterans. So you could be a very important part of a study, even if you yourself are not a veteran. So we have a number of different exercise studies. We have a brain studies and a registry, and I'll just kind of take a happy little tour through those with you. Go ahead. Some of our exercise studies I know you've heard about in the past. We have some very fun studies of dance, and these are they're proceeding slowly through the COVID reopening time. But for example, for people with Parkinson's disease, and then also for healthy aging people, we have dance studies, and we're looking at the effect of partnered dance, ballroom dance, on the symptoms or the effects of Parkinson's disease. And we're also looking at exercise. So we have a number of really great participants, many of whom went ahead and exercised through the whole COVID time, exercising at home with equipment. So please get in touch with us if you're interested in this. To improve your heart and your vascular function, your artery function, but also this exercise appears to have the potential to improve brain function, and that's what some of our studies are examining. Go ahead. Then we have this word aphasia, and one of my colleagues who has had a stroke and has aphasia tells me he likes the word aphasia because it reminds him of a beautiful flower. But it is a communication disorder after injury to the left side of the brain in general. And so if you know someone who has aphasia, if you love someone who has aphasia, if you are just interested in this, because frequently in these kind of studies, we do have the opportunity for folks to participate for comparison who are healthy. We have these studies, and some of them involve looking at the brain. Some of them involve stimulating the brain with magnets. We have studies of kind of the brain's internal GPS. So spatial function, we call it. And when people have difficulty with the GPS, when the GPS is broken and not functioning properly, usually after an injury to the right brain, we can have this disorder called spatial neglect. And then we are also looking at brain stimulation with magnets, again, for people who are aged, but we also, very exciting, have studies in fibromyalgia. So if you have chronic pain, or you love someone who has chronic pain and they've been diagnosed with this problem, fibromyalgia, we have studies to really look at the basis of that, and again, the effects of brain stimulation on that problem. Go ahead. If you didn't see anything that fits you, but you still are kind of interested in contributing or being part of rehabilitation research, maybe you've had rehabilitation or you know someone who's had rehabilitation and you want to give back, or maybe you're just kind of interested and want to come up and see our center, we have a registry for future studies, and you can participate in the registry. So if you agree to participate, what we would do is take your name and your contact information and some health history. You don't have to be a veteran. You can be a veteran, of course. In particular, if you're part of an underrepresented group, you would definitely be somebody we'd like to have in the registry, because again, you would be helping to stand up for the veterans who are part of your group and might not be represented in research. And again, visual and neurocognitive disorders in particular are something that we're interested in getting in the registry. And people will call you and ask you about whether you're interested in volunteering for research projects. And if in the future we have other research other than the research we've talked about today, you'd have the opportunity to participate. And offline, we can provide people with a little QR code there, or the numbers, we can provide them offline as well. I think there's maybe one more slide. So we have a website y'all can come to. Feel free to investigate, to explore, or if you don't see what you want on the website, feel free to call us and tell us what you'd like to see. We would love to talk to you. Amy Rodriguez, again, who I think a lot of you have met, and Marianne Wetherill, who's also assisting with our connectivity core, our outreach group, are available and they can chat with you. And I'm also available if you need to make contact with me. Again, I'm AM, like the morning, Barrett. So real pleasure to be with you all today. And thank you so much for inviting me to be with your group.
Thank you so much, Dr. Barrett. And I'm just going to repeat the number. If people want to pick up the telephone and dial in, it's 404-728-5064. If you want to call and get clarification or better understanding, or get help with navigating how to sign up for the registry. One question, Dr. Barrett, is this like across the board? I mean, are these studies and registries unique to the 13 centers, or can you go to any VA to access some of these services?
Well, we wish it could be national. Unfortunately, if you sign up, it's kept within Atlanta, and that's for reasons related to the way that the VA keeps things private. We can, though, and we do, connect people to opportunities nationwide. So if, for example, you want us, you're asking us, oh, hey, what's going on in Tennessee? And can you connect us to researchers there? We do every month attend these calls for all the research centers in rehabilitation. And, you know, in LA, in Boston, in Iowa City, Iowa, we have colleagues who can participate with you in getting you involved in research.
Wonderful. And we are going to post the website in the chat just so people can grab that website. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Barrett. That really helped us get like a 5,000-foot view of all the things that the VA and the CVN are doing collaboratively right here in Metro Atlanta.
Yeah, I just want to comment. There was a great comment from the daughter of one of our veterans. Thank you. To say hi to your dad and tell your dad that there are opportunities in San Antonio. You can write to us by email or call, and we can connect you.
Okay. All right. Well, wonderful. Thank you guys again. I see you're still hanging with us, 180 of you. Every week we have been closing out with a feature about our healthy aging study. And if you are still on and want to hang with us just for a few more minutes, we're going to make some announcements. So I do want you to listen to this video from Mr. Crump, who is a current participant in the Healthy Brain Study. But in order for you to be considered for the Healthy Brain Study, you have to sign up for the Healthy Aging Study. So if you have been online and viewing our sessions each week, we have been helping you understand how to access that link and what to expect. It's an online questionnaire, and once you complete that questionnaire, you're an active research volunteer. So really quickly, I want to share this video with each of you.
Can't hear Cornelia.
All right. Well, we're hearing, getting some comments about technical difficulties. So at any rate, we did post the link in the chat, and we'll send this link out when we send out the PowerPoints and the recording. Okay. All right. So we are closing out. Thank you again for joining us this Tuesday. Our final plug, we're going to post the registration link again for our 19th Brain Health Forum. You say, why do you keep talking about this? Because what happens is we have the program and then we get inundated with emails about, oh my gosh, I missed it, or I so wanted to participate in this in the session. And so we want to keep encouraging you to go ahead and register. Give us a raised hand or a thumbs up or a anything to just say, hey, I'm already registered and I have shared this with at least one or two of my friends. Oh, wow. Okay, wonderful. So when I checked registration a little bit earlier, we're close to about 300 people registered. So remember, you can tune in from anywhere in the world. So it would be great to have people in other states or on the other side of the world to join together and even hosting a watch party live. To view the program. So let's see here. Super information. Thank you for doing this. I'm viewing from Detroit, Michigan. Well, thank you so much. We're so happy to have you join us today. And again, every Tuesday we'll be bringing this program until we're able to resume our in-person engagement. But in the meantime, we'll have our 19th forum on August 27th. And then on November 3rd, that's election day, we're still going to have a session, but we're going to have fun. We're going to keep it light. We're going to probably have John come on and we'll have a little dance party. So if you've already taken care of all of your voting responsibilities, make plans to join us on November 3rd. But again, October 27th, we're going to have a Brain Talk session, but it will be our Brain Health Forum beginning at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and it will go until 3 p.m. So Dr. Parker told you all of the speakers you're going to hear from and all of the people who will be participating and everything they're going to cover. We're going to keep it light, right? We're going to keep it pleasant and light, but still informative. And then you'll be able to take lots of notes and access the PowerPoints as well. Then November 3rd, we're going to have a little fun on election day. So bring your, we'll play trivia and maybe have a few giveaways. And of course, we're going to do our exercise. Then the following week after that, we're going to pick back up with our regular programming and just keep going until we close out 2020. Okay. All right, so if there aren't any other questions, we are going to say goodbye and thank you for joining us. See you next Tuesday at 1 p.m.